infuse this industry with your energy and enrich the community of everyone working towards the same thing, which is making dope animation.
Hi everyone, for this new interview I had the pleasure to have Lana Bachynski, former senior animator at Blizzard on Heroes of the Storm and on League of Legends for Riot Games. She's currently a senior animator at the R&D department of Riot Games. In this video, we'll be talking about her career, but also getting access to educational content for wannabe animators. Let's get started. Hi Lana, how are you doing?
Hi, I am doing great. How are you?
I'm fine, I'm caffeinated, so I'm doing good. Can you introduce yourself for the people who don't know you?
Sure. Hello, people who don't know me. My name is Lana Bachynski. I am currently a senior animator at Riot Games, working in R&D.
Great.
Yeah.
So where are you from? Where do you live?
Well, where I'm from and where I live are two different places. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I live in Long Beach, California.
Cool. How is it there?
It's nice. Yeah, it gets a little too hot for me in the summer. I miss like the seasons of back home very, very much. I feel like there's a lot of people here who feel that way, but we're here for the games.
Yeah,
we're here for the industry, so it's beautiful. I love it, but I miss home too.
Cool, great. So I will start with some fast and random question, as I told you before, just to get warmed up. So nothing too silly, don't worry, but it's just to get relaxed and into the interview.
All right, I'm ready.
So, what's your favorite color?
See, this is should be a really simple answer, but I always like to say I like color combinations more than I like specific colors, but I'm going to keep it simple and say teal.
Teal, okay.
Teal.
Are you more cat or dog?
I'm probably more cat. I grew up with cats, but you got to train them like a dog, you know? You just can't have cats and then they're going to be scratchy and mean. Like a lot of people get cats because they're like, oh, I don't have to raise them. They'll just raise themselves or whatever. But no. You got to train a cat, and then you have like a lovable, mushy, beautiful, soft friend.
Okay, cool. Your favorite food?
My favorite food is Italian food. I love just a plain old, like a spaghetti with a great tomato sauce. Love it. Give me some garlic bread. Oil and vinegar. Yeah, that's my shit.
Okay.
That's my stuff. I don't know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't curse.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Your favorite drink?
My favorite drink is probably just coffee. I really like coffee way too much. Way too much.
Yeah. I think that's a very common stuff to all the people I'm interviewing, coffee.
It's my favorite and also a necessity.
Yeah, definitely. Your favorite band or musical artist? You can name a few if you want.
Yeah, my favorite band is probably Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. It's like a little retro 60s action, but I love it. I can't think of almost any of his songs that I don't love.
Okay.
I think
cool.
I would just say that, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Okay, I will have to dig into the internet to find my way.
He's got so many hits, and people don't really think of it. Like, oh, that's Frankie Valli, but you know the song. You're just too good to be true.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's Frankie. Okay. That's Frankie, baby.
Okay, cool. Favorite moment of the day?
My favorite moment of the day. My favorite moment of the day is probably the time in between breakfast and work when I can have a cup of coffee and do something that is just for me. So it's either watching a show before work or reading a book or something. I have a really lovely view on my balcony. And so just opening the blinds in the morning and looking out, I have a really great view of the beach and the water and just looking at the ocean in the morning. I really love.
Yeah, that must be super cool. Favorite video game? This one is pretty hard.
That is really tough because I feel like there's definitely ones I can think of as my favorite video game, like are on the list of favorite video games. My go-to one to say is the Jack and Daxter trilogy. Anybody who's ever listened to me talk before knows that I love Jack and Daxter. I just thought those games were so great. There's some of the reasons I wanted to animate in video games. But probably the game that I play most often, still to this day, is Heroes of the Storm. I play
Cool.
like 6 times a week.
Yeah, I guess you play Orphea.
Oh, I've played almost exclusively Orphea since she was released. It's like embarrassing. I'm like level 200 and something with her. Yeah, definitely.
Favorite 2D artists?
My favorite 2D artist is Jake Clark.
Okay.
Cuphead animator.
Ah, yeah.
Absolute talent. I
Yeah.
miss that guy so much. And yeah, he's my favorite. He's my favorite 2D artist.
Oh, yeah, cool. I've rewatched the GDC talk yesterday while I was, animating too, and I love he seems super natural, super young too. I don't know how old is he? I think he's
Yeah, when I first met him, I was expecting. I did an interview with him, similar to the style that we're doing, is a lead up to the very first GDC micro talks that we ever hosted. I did like a 30-minute sort of feature of all the micro talk animators because their talks are so short. And I reached out to him being like, will you be part of this session? And I was so nervous. And thought he was going to be like this seasoned, like older guy with kids, like something about it. Like I had that vibe. And then he joined the call and I was like, are you 16? What's happening? But yeah, he's definitely a young guy.
Yeah.
Younger than expected. Less talented or seasoned, but he's
He's and it was a crazy workload and work pipeline they had on this project. I mean, that's awesome to see this kind of stuff in the industry, and that's really cool. Favorite animator?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this one is kind of hard. I don't know myself which one.
I don't know. I don't know if I could name my favorite animators. I know so many animators. A favorite individual animator. Oh shoot. I feel like the things that are like my favorite animated moments, I don't know the people who animated them. And so there's like I don't know. I don't know my favorite animator. Yeah. I'm really bad about like following specific animators. I'll like see games I love and things I like moments I love from shows or games, and I'm like, that was great. And then I'm really bad about being like, but who did that specific thing? I should be better about that, honestly.
I get that. I do the same. I try to sound clever, but I have notes, and I'm like, we did this before I go into interviews, Okay, no problem. So I'd like to jump a bit in your career and your path to where you are today. So when did you get into 3D animation, and what hit in your life put you in this medium, let's say?
Well, I first discovered, or was introduced, I guess I didn't find it on my own, animation in high school. I was really fortunate. In Edmonton, when I was growing up, there was a school for the arts that goes from 7th grade all the way to 12th grade. And so I got a chance to try a whole bunch of different arts. And I grew up, my parents are both artists and did a lot of art, but animation was never really a thing, even though I loved video games so much. I never put together that animation was something in there. So in high school, there's a introductory to photography, web design, and animation.
Okay.
And I made like a flip book, was the first animation I made. And then like the very next thing we did was open a program called Cinema 4D, which I think is mostly used in motion graphics and stuff now. And I did all these tutorials. I just thought it was the coolest, most satisfying thing to like make these shapes just spin around in the world. And it felt like it really just clicked with the things I like doing, which is like play video games and play on the computer. And also I really liked theater and acting. And so when I got into the later years in high school, like creating characters to go do acting pieces. It felt very much like, oh, it's like a different type of theater. And I love that about it. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what that stuck me on the path.
You told that your parents were more or less into the artistic industry in a way, or have artistic jobs. Can you let us know a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. My parents actually met on stage. They were like the main stage actor and actress for the Windsor Light Opera for years and years. But I don't know. My parents have told me enough. I don't retain certain types of information very well. But my dad was like doing theater stuff, but he was going to law school. So my dad didn't end up being an artist for his job, but he like paints, and my parents both act and they both sing and play music, like all types of instruments. And so growing up, we always had a very artistic household.
Okay.
My mother is an actress, artist, singer, like as her job. That's what she does. And so we just were raised loving art, doing art. My mom would be directing in the theater. And so my sister and I have like all these vivid memories of being at the theater and like very dangerously running up and down the backs of the seats in the auditorium, or being backstage with all these weird adults in costumes. It was fun.
Okay,
It was a
cool.
lot of fun.
So you've been growing up with a lot of surrounded by art and music. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've seen that you've spent a few months working at Visual Ink or something like that,
Yeah. That's
as being
man,
your
that's
first job. Can you let us know a bit about that?
yeah, that's really funny. Man, good research. Yeah, Visual Ink Creative was one of my first jobs. My first like industry job. I had an internship at Blizzard before Visual Ink. Um, and of course I was like a waitress or whatever. But right out of university, having had that internship, I was like all this confidence in the world, like, okay, Blizzard, I graduated, baby. Call me back. Where's my phone call? And at that time, like the game that would be Overwatch just like did like a reboot kind of thing. They made like a
Yeah,
documentary
okay.
about it or whatever.
Yeah,
So that was
Project
like that
Titan.
moment in
Hmm.
time. And so Blizzard, rather than let people go, they had like pulled the devs into other teams at the company. So all the other teams that might have hired me, where they were full, they were like, no, can you wait a year? And I was like, I am from another country. I am on a visa. I cannot wait a year. I need a job. And they were like, well, figure that out. So my friend Miranda Middlewood, she was working at Visual Link, and she said it's not an animation job per se, but we need somebody to do these illustrations for sort of these corporate informational videos, and they want to move into the digital space at this company. So you should come here because you're a pretty quick illustrator. And I was like, okay. And it was a very small team of people. It was 1, 2, 3, like 6 of us total. And yeah, we did all these weird corporate videos for like Pepsi and HP, and we made this elaborate video of like how people get hacked for like IT security, and I just did all these weird illustrations that would be later turned into like if you've ever taken sort of a corporate training video where they're like, the illustrations are thinking and then they do this. It's like these are the drawings that I did that they would edit and turn into these videos for the companies.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a very, very strange job. And the team was so good and so quirky. And I worked there, yeah, like 6 months. And then Blizzard eventually texted me and were like, you
Cool.
want to come back? Yeah.
Cool. What was it the time where you started training with charcoal and all your realistic portrait stuff? When did you start doing this?
Oh, my charcoal stuff was, I learned how to do charcoal drawings in university. I've never done like an interview that was like just about me. This is like crazy. It feels crazy to talk about. I'm always talking about like a game I worked on. This is wild. Um, Yeah, I do the charcoal drawings because in university, when there's like a lot of different ways to study animation, and I feel like if I didn't need a bachelor's to get a visa, I would not have gone to the school that I went to at all. But I'm very thankful that I did because even though like 5 years is a long time to get the degree, I feel like I have a really well-rounded grip on art in a way that I might not have if I just specifically studied animation. So when you're going to animation school, we also took a bunch of fundamentals. So we took figure drawing and figure studies, and that sort of branched into like more niche like studies of like figure sculpting in clay, like physically clay, or longer studies of learning clothes figure drawing, and even longer study classes of anatomy where you learn like they teach you sort of realistic charcoal rendering. And that's the part that really stuck to me, was sort of like the realism and the meditative almost process of shading a little and like smudging it away to get like depth and finding these different textures all from one medium. I just it's not as expressive as I think a lot of 2D art is, because it's just like trying to get something as close to a photograph as you can, but the actual process of it is really meditative for me, and I really enjoy that.
Cool. And you're still doing this to date, and do you still take some? I've seen that you were taking some commissions, or we can order some charcoal portrait if we want.
Yes, yeah. During quarantine, I was like, oh, I save all this time in my life now that I'm not commuting to work and back. And so I opened up charcoal commissions, and then I immediately got way too many commissions. So I did a couple through the quarantine here. I did one of Princess Leia that I was pretty happy with. I did another of Seven of Nine from Star Trek. And most recently, my pal Christian Spicer commissioned me to do a portrait. It was my first like realistic charcoal fictional character portrait of his main character, Kara, from his comic book Consequences. And so my charcoal art is actually the cover of the comic book.
Oh,
it's not out yet, but it's being made. So I'm pretty pumped. It's an alternate avenue for art. Yeah,
that's
great.
That's great. Cool. So let's talk a bit your time at Blizzard, if you will.
Sure.
How did you get there?
How did I get to Blizzard?
Yeah.
An extreme amount of luck, like a truly extreme amount of luck. And I don't think I definitely think that my personal skill at the time has stuff to do with it. But I look back at that reel and I'm like, all right, not great. Especially like seeing a lot of the student work that I see now. It's like, whew, yikes, how did that happen? But Blizzard is very interesting because I don't know if you had this experience. Did you study animation like at an animation school, or did you teach yourself?
Yeah, no, I taught myself.
I think a lot about my school experience, and a lot of times I'm like, oh, I could have gotten out into the industry so much sooner if I had just known about things like Animation Mentor or iAnimate or any of those anim school like courses that would be like more bite-sized. I wish I knew about them. But while I was in school, there was like this interesting thing. Maybe you've even seen it. Like people have Twitter fights about it a lot too, where there is like this certain subset of the animation class that when I showed up, like right when I came to university, I was like, I want to work for Blizzard. I think the first time I wanted to work for Blizzard, I was like 12 or something. Okay. And so I came to university like, I'm going to work for Blizzard. And immediately my peers were like, you want to make a video game as an animator? And like, we're very rude about it in a weird way, where it was treated as like this lesser art form. Yeah. You're a lesser animator if you want to work in games. And of course, there's like a level of peer pressure where I show up and I'm like, oh, shoot. I do want to be an animator. I wanted to work at Blizzard because I really liked what they were making, but maybe that's the wrong call for me. I want to do the best thing for an animator. And so I kind of pivoted into focusing my work more on wanting to work at a creature house like Tippett Studio or ILM. I wanted to animate monsters fighting each other in films. And that was like an authentic desire, but it felt weird to be like, I guess I don't want to work for Blizzard after all. And so I really focused on just doing like the film animation. And basically every assignment we ever got was like, you know, animating a lip sync, animating a fight. There's not like, oh, animate a character kit. There's none of that. At least when I was going to school, there's no games focused animation courses. And so my second last year in university, I had a friend who sent me a link, which is funny because I was still going to GDC and stuff as a volunteer. And so a friend of mine had sent me this link and was like, oh, hey, Blizzard is actually looking for an animation intern. I've never seen that before. Didn't you say you wanted to work there? And I was like, oh, yeah, I did. I did want to work at Blizzard. I do want to work at Blizzard. Okay, so I applied online with my reel, which I think is still publicly available on my Vimeo for anybody. I didn't send it to you because it is bad. But I'll send it to you after if you want
I
to
will
edit
dig
it
the
in.
internet to download it and put it full screen when you are on this section.
I leave it. I like to leave it on my Vimeo so that so people can sort of see my growth and see like, oh, like this was what level you're at when you got a job. Like that's not that crazy. So maybe it's worth showing. But I submitted with this reel and then honestly forgot that I had applied at all because it wasn't until like 3 months later that I got an email that was like, excuse me, that was like, hey, we would like you to take an animation test for the StarCraft team. And I was sitting in the lab. And some people were like helping me troubleshoot something. And I pulled up my email or the browser to like Google something. And I was like, an email from Blizzard? What is this? Like totally forgot. And then in that moment, I was like, what are we doing? Nothing. Get away. I have a test to start. Like immediately, like panic mode, got to get into it. And they test was insane. It felt insane at the time. They sent me a mesh and they wanted me to rig and animate 5 animations for a character in 10 days. And I didn't do any rigging at the time. And I was like, I just immediately started sweating, basically. Yeah, it was like it felt insane. I basically called all my teachers like, I'm not coming to school. Sorry. And I did this test. I didn't actually rig the character with the help of my pal. I did a skin wrap to Norman and then just used Norman's rig to animate my test. And so when I turned it in and I had like this review call with them, I was like, I have to be really honest with you. I was so guilty. I have to be really honest with you. I didn't rig the character. I'm so sorry. I'm not good at rigging, but I explained what I did and they really liked my problem solving ability.
Yeah, I think that's super important because they can evaluate if you are willing to ask somebody for help or thing like that. It's better than getting stuck onto something and not ask for help because, you know, even in the industry or at work, if you stay still because you feel ashamed to ask for help, that won't be a good thing. So, yeah.
We were just talking about that. We had an intern start today and we were just talking about how, like, if you get stuck for more than 15, or I said, if you get stuck for more than 15 minutes, you should just reach out to somebody. And immediately somebody else on the team was like, if you get stuck for more than 5, I was like, yeah, you're right. That is the way. Like, why ram your head against the wall if you don't know the answer?
Definitely. Yeah. So you got the internship, then you left the internship, worked at in the illustration company, and got back into Blizzard like a few months ago. Later, sorry, to work on Heroes of the Storm. That's right.
That is right. I want to add one thing because I realized I sort of got off in the weeds about my internship, about why it was like a heavy amount of luck that I got the internship. I totally
Yeah,
forgot to
yeah,
add
yeah.
that part in
Go
there.
ahead, go ahead.
um, but it was really lucky because it didn't feel like luck at the time. It was like, yeah, my skills did it, and they did because the skills got me the initial interview in the first place. But at the end of my internship, my boss was taking me to like my last lunch before I was leaving the team, and he told me this story about how they weren't going to hire me, but it was down to me and one other person, and the other person already had like 2 other internships under their belt. Like they were way more experienced and they seemed to be gelling really well with the team. But my boss said that he told a joke that didn't land, and he was so embarrassed that they hired me instead.
Whoa.
And I was like, uh, okay. It was like the most like humbling thing, and I didn't feel like really like inflated about the internship anyway, but it was so humbling to be like, oh, the
Yeah,
reason you got this internship was because somebody else was too embarrassed with the other guy. Like, and so I feel like I've kept that with me for my whole career, and I will always keep it with me. Is like it's like a good reason to know why things don't go right sometimes. Is sometimes maybe they made a bad joke and they
yeah,
just feel bad,
yeah.
and it's a good reason why things go well. It's like it's not because you're the most badass person that exists. It's maybe because you just got lucky. So keeps you humble.
So don't do silly joke during interviews, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
a cool story. So can you rapidly explain us what you were in charge of in the Heroes of the Storm team at that
Yeah.
time?
For Heroes, I started as an associate, and so I was just doing like individual contributor work, just animating sort of task by task. But what I think of as the bulk of my time in more senior animation, I was responsible for being sort of embedded on a pod with designers and effects artists and a whole team of people who would create a Heroes animation from like the earliest ideation to like the final bug fixes and the kiss as it goes out the door. I also was responsible for being a spokesperson, and so I did a lot of public speaking as well, and that was great.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen some of the videos you did. So you were involved in the character creation pipeline, like from scratch to final result pretty soon. What put you into this position at Blizzard? Is there an intern kind of challenge, or was it just some luck, or maybe an opportunity or something like that?
I think that all the animators worked with like a pod of people, but the team itself is sort of what shifted over time. So at the beginning of Heroes development, the team was more working in like a waterfall kind of strategy. So somebody would create something in design, they'd go through all these iterations, and kind of when they felt like they were done with it, they'd pass it to art, and art would make art stuff, and then nobody really talked to each other.
Yeah.
And so doing the individual work was more about like Maps said they need a new camp, we need to animate it, and it'd be like, okay, I'll animate the camp. And leadership was talking, but being in IC, there was not like a lot of understanding or communication. And then the team eventually like worked really hard to refine their processes because we were shipping, I think, like every 3 weeks, and that wasn't fast enough. It wasn't refined enough. People at the end of the pipeline, like audio and QA, never had enough time to do the things they needed to do to make sure that the products was really going to be what we want it to be. And so we shifted into sort of this pod structure. When I started on Heroes, there was only 3 of us animating, and so we didn't have a choice but to be like responsible for huge tasks. I think Like my colleague Karina animated one of our most popular heroes, Murky, in 2 weeks, and he has like 30 animations or
Oh,
something.
that's
Like
crazy.
it was wild. We were animating like
Yeah.
yeah, like it was, but it's crazy. Nobody was like crunching, but it was not. It felt nonstop. It was really really wild. And then I think the biggest the animation team got was like 7 of us. And so we'd start having just a little bit of overlap. And so there'd be like a main animator for a skin or for a hero. And then we'd have like an animation meeting where we'd say, okay, I'm going to take all this, but if somebody can handle the dance and the mount on the horse and the beast type, that'd be great. And then other animators who are available would take those other animations and support the main animator on their product.
Okay. I think you've explained this kind of changing in the strategy during your GDC talk on Orphea, showing a graphic about using a non-linear workflow to create the character and where the game designer and the art team were involved, and it was a lot of cycling process where you do an animation and you see if it feels great and if it fits the character background and stuff, but maybe it's inspire a new game design or something like that, and you have to go back into the process. So is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, I find myself talking a lot, like when I think about my time on Heroes, because of our tight timelines. I feel like I rarely talk about our animation technique on the team as much as I'd like to, because it almost took a backseat to the developments we had to make on the team structure and the communication side to make sure that things would be able to be refined. Like we were getting so many hang-ups in the communication that the animation was like almost like a first pass animation out the door. Eventually, like the communication loop you're talking about, the iteration loop of going back and forth between design and animation, when we'd get on these pods, we built like such a remarkable amount of trust that sometimes the designer would be like, here's like the paper design for this hero that we want to do. That's just like the abilities written on paper and what we think they'll be like. And then they had faith in the animation team so that if we'd see something and we'd be like, that this would actually feel a little bit better, and we could do like a cooler animation if you gave us 0.25 seconds more. Or what if in like this same AoE, but instead of the fantasy that you pitched for this ability, what if we made it look like this? Or we pulled in this element from this hero's, this lore that we could put here, and then design would be lenient and very collaborative with us on what would be the right kind of look and feel to the abilities. It was fantastic.
Okay, cool. Super interesting. So after Heroes of the Storm, you got at Riot, if I'm right. What pushed you to if you want to talk about it, to get to the League of Legends team, and how did you get there?
Yeah. I was working on Heroes of the Storm for about 5.5 years, which is a long time to be working on one game, and especially a game as a service that, like the future of the game, you can sort of see what it looks like because it looks like what you're doing today. There's a few things that drove me to Riot or attracted me to Riot. I wasn't driven to Riot. I wasn't like shoot out the door. At Blizzard, people really, really, really love Blizzard. And so there's a lot of like the way that I wanted to grow my career and how I wanted to grow myself at the time, there wasn't a lot of room for me to grow upwards because everybody who was in positions of management or leading teams loved what they were doing. So there wasn't a lot of opening for me to grow in that way. So I started looking around a little bit to sort of other teams within Blizzard. But at the same time, actually, Riot had like their articles drop, like their notorious articles from Kotaku drop. And I had a friend at Riot who had been pushing me to just come like to Riot for a tour to check it out. And I reached out concerned for them or just wanting to know like what was going on. And we ended up having this big conversation about everything that was going on at Riot. And one of the things they said was they were so worried that they had maybe scared me away from Riot, or that they were worried that I thought they were maybe being predatory in some way. And I said, no, I wanted to talk to you the most because Riot seems like a place that I could maybe go to help, like to be part of a solution. And they said, well, why don't you? And I didn't have a good answer of why I didn't. And so I said, okay, you know what? Let me talk to your team. And the more I talked to the team, I heard about all the strides that Riot was taking and like really making an effort to change. And I watched them grow over the course of like another year after that initial conversation. And I was like, this seems like I'm really excited about what they're doing and how they're working together. And so I want to be a part of this. And so I joined.
Yeah, cool. So you were working on the League of Legends team. I think you've shown your entry exercise on
Yes.
one of the R.A.T stream. So I will show it in the video and maybe push people toward the stream because it was super interesting. But what were you in charge of on the League of Legends team?
On League of Legends, I was working on a legendary content pod. So I was making legendary skins for League of Legends.
Great. And so nowadays you're working at the R&D in the R&D team. So what is this?
What is R&D? Research and development is basically a team of people exploring ideas and thematics and game styles and anything that you can imagine a game company would want to be researching and trying to develop it.
Okay, so basically you are doing like prototype of game designs and you are in charge of making those prototype feels good, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess you can't talk about what you're doing that much.
No, unfortunately not.
Unfortunately. Is this, I think that will be frustrating for me to work on animation I can't show. I can't publish. How is it for you?
For me, I don't mind. My entire career, I have worked on live service games, which has been very satisfying because once every 3 months, something I work is shipping. And so that satisfying experience of like, oh my gosh, something shipped. I know developers who've worked in the industry for 10 years and they've only worked on games that were canceled and they've never gotten to show the world what they worked on. And I've only worked on something where I know my work is going out the door. And that's really exciting because you get to see community reaction. You get to talk with people about what you did. You get to make a beautiful demo reel, like so many cool things about it. But it is also exhausting to like continue to try and match your last level of something awesome that you did. Like, how do you top the last thing you made? And that can be very wearing. And so for me, I'm like, give me the break. It's like a mental vacation. And I still find so many other ways to share with community through like conversations like this, or like you mentioned, the R.A.T stream, that I'm not necessarily like hungry for a lack of things to share. So the biggest thing is I just want people to see what we're working on because it's exciting, but being patient and the payoff will be more worth it in the end, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't play that much video game because, as you explained in the interview, I think with Rick Arroyo at I Animate, that I think we have the same kind of syndrome. If we get into a game, we can't do anything else but playing games. So I try to avoid playing games, but I'm really looking forward to the new titles from Riot because there are a lot of things under the table that they have already spoken of. So I think There's gonna be some nice art pieces to play with
Yeah.
sooner or later. I don't know. Okay, so I wanted to bounce on what you were talking. The fact that you animate a lot of events and you are really willing to share your skill, or at least to give access to animation skill to a lot of people, or animation training. So what did motivate you to get involved into the GDC talks, the Anime
Mm.
Exchange? And can you talk a bit about Tea Time and Anime Exchange?
Oh, I would be so happy to talk about Tea Time and the Animation Exchange. I got really into sharing knowledge and community events when I was in university, because there was a point about halfway through my university education that I was in a bad place. Like, with my skill level was bad. I was sad. I was like away from my family, just broke up with my boyfriend, like a million things at the time that felt really stressful. I was also an immigrant, and so I couldn't get a job and I had no money. Like, it was a very stressful, bad time. And when I first got to the school community was kind of divided. They had two different computer labs. They named them after studios. And so one was the ILM lab, one was the Blue Sky lab. And if you worked in the Blue Sky lab, you were like the cool kids. And you've worked in the ILM lab, that maybe you want to work in video games. Like,
Okay.
it was like, and nobody like really talked to each other. So even when I was struggling with things, I didn't know who to maybe ask for help. I didn't know how to ask for help. And then I got reached out to by my two really good friends, Mandy Middlewood and Keaton Tips, and they ran what was called the AAU Animation Club. And they said, hey, you're at the lab a lot. We need somebody else to be a leader on paper so that we can run the club. Can we just write your name down? And I was like, yeah, but also, if I'm going to put my name on something, I'll
Yeah.
come to the club.
Yeah.
And so I showed up, and there was 5 of us, like Mandy, Keaton, and I, the 3 people, the leaders of the club, and 2 other random people from the school. And all we did was like share a couple of animations that we found on Vimeo that we thought were really great for like an hour. And everybody was like, great, good meeting everybody. And kind of walked away. And I was unbelievably energized by that. I was like, this is incredible. I'd never seen that animation before. I never would have seen that animation if somebody didn't show that to me. That was crazy. And I was like so pumped just by like talking to and I was in classes, but I didn't talk to anybody about the things I was excited about, and realizing what an exciting feeling that was for me. I was like, this could be, what if we did this every week? And they're like, yeah, it's a club. That's what we're supposed to do. And I was like, but we should tell more people about it. And like, I just got it. It felt like I was in this dark pit of frustration and sadness about my personal skill level. And just talking to other people about it and getting excited about this thing we were all working so hard towards, like turn this light bulb on in my head. And so we started doing AAU Animation Club, eventually turned into Tea Time Animation, which is it's a long story behind how it became Tea Time. But long story short, we changed the name, and we started doing like really big fancy posters around the school. And we started like formatting how we would make these club sessions for every semester. And then we started formatting things specifically around the principles, because it became like a really good way for new people to understand, and for people who are later in their education to share and practice. And then we started talking about all the different gaps that we saw in the curriculums and things that we struggled with. And we helped the school like fix the curriculum so that students coming in would have a better, smoother learning experience. And all of that, like being at the head of all that with Brandon Nason, my really good friend, senior animator at Blizzard right now on Overwatch, Miranda Middlewood, Keaton Tips, and then a long list of other amazing Tea Time staff members. It was just a transformative experience in my life. Teaching other people about animation helped me. Like when people would come to me with questions, I could go back and be like, I actually don't know the answer to that. And then I would study the answer to it so I could help somebody else. And everything about that experience, I feel like, prepared me for the industry in a way that none of my classes ever did. And we built in time for critique so that like my skill level being like, you know, in hell, was able to like bring it up and with the help of my peers get to a place where I knew what I was doing. I was confident and capable. And forming and being a part of Tea Time Animation, I said it before 1,000 times and I'll say it again, it just fundamentally changed my life and my perspective on what animation was and what a community in an industry could be. And so when this is like I feel bad. I'm just like talking forever.
No. That's I mean that I was expecting to talk more about that than anything else in your career because
Okay.
I do educational content too, and that's really enlightening to hear you talk about this because I also do feel that trying to do this kind of content push you to learn like deeper the thing to be able to explain them, and whenever you are explaining something I feel like it's like a digesting process, and if you can clearly explain them, it doesn't mean you've understood them, but it means you are understanding them while you are explaining them. I feel like that, so that's very interesting. And also the fact that as I told you, I've discovered you like several years ago with the GDC talks, and I saw you like everywhere, like on the R.A.Ts and stuff like that. And I was, what does motivate her to be so exposed in a way and be some kind of animation evangelist? This is what I've written in the notes. So that's cool to have the, you know, all the story about that. So I like to go a little deeper into it, but just before, just talk a bit about the R.A.Ts, just to what are those and why did you create this kind of association, let's say?
Yeah, so the R.A.Ts is the Riot Animation Team, and we created it. I would not say I created it, but we created the R.A.T because Riot Games is a very cool thing that now that I've experienced it, I'm like, everybody everywhere in the industry should have this in some way. They call them the communities of practice, and they are every once a week for an hour. There's a dedicated time slot for disciplines to gather across the company, like any discipline, effects, modeling, animation, production, leadership, and talk about things that are relevant to the discipline. And it's not driven by anyone in particular. There's not a leadership mandate. In fact, you don't even have to. It's completely optional. And there are many COPs that just don't exist anymore because people didn't find them important. But coming to Riot and hearing about the COP, I immediately thought about Tea Time and how impactful that was for me. And when I joined Riot, the animation COP, very much like Tea Time, was just a couple people who would show up sometimes because people are like, oh, I have too much work to do. I'm really focused. I'm in the zone. I don't want to leave the zone, kind of thing. Or the biggest question, or the biggest thing I still get from people is like, what's in it for me? Like, what am I getting from this? And I just I'm not down for that. And there's like a couple of people who were passionate and wanted something more from the COP, but it is a lot of work and there's a lot of planning that goes into it. And I like having what I've learned from Tea Time and from the Animation Exchange, and I feel like I had a really good foundation to start building something. And so along with Adam Turnbull and Nick Matthews, we developed a plan to invite people to come together to talk about the things that they absolutely don't want from a community, what they do want from a community, and what they could provide for the community. Because I think the biggest part about community is getting rid of the attitude of what's in it for me and thinking of how can I share, who can I help, and what from there we started figuring out a cadence. And then most importantly, we wanted an identity for the team to rally behind, because coming together as animation COP is like generic and boring and like, who wants it? Who cares? And so we held like a series of 3 identity finding sessions where people pitched different names. We pitched just words and kind of put names together. But the one that stood out right away was just the Riot. Matthew Johnson just wrote on a Post-it. I still have the Post-it actually, just R.A.T. And everybody immediately was like, rats. And it just kind of like stuck that all of us would be rats. And people feeling like they were a part of something, that not only that it was a community that they could be involved in, but that they were there for how it started and they were a piece of it, helps it stick. Yeah, and cool. So that's how we started.
Cool, great. I think that's something I try to do. I mean, we have a very small company, but try to have some talks, and this is really something I like to do because I do believe that you can learn from anybody, and the more you learn from different departments, the better you get in your own. And I think that's when I've discussed with Dave Gibson about a senior position or lead position, those are the people that kind of have interest in everything else. And you can learn basically from anybody. So I do understand this will to share, and that's super. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the stream of the R.A.Ts, because I mean there are a bunch of super talented people talking about animation in a very relaxed way. That's super cool, and I feel like it's also something about Riot that I do appreciate, is that it seems that they are really willing to share what they do beyond the marketing and commercial stuff with how do you make games and video series they did, the R.A.Ts now, and a lot of small events like this. So I feel like that's super interesting. So you are kind of continuing what you were doing with Tea Time in Riot.
Yeah. And Tea Time still exists. I don't run weekly club meetings anymore, but we have the Riot intern has actually ran the Purdue chapter of Tea Time Animation. We've still got AAU. We've got one in Portugal, and we've got one UW Stout in Wisconsin, Menominee.
What do you do at Tea Time? You've explained how it was born, but nowadays, how does it work since you're not in the university anymore? I guess well, just explain us what Tea Time is doing exactly.
Sure. So Tea Time, we've got the different chapters. My responsibility for Tea Time is now more in general chapter support and like conflict mediation and finding new chapters and booting people up into creating their own Tea Time chapter. We have a Discord server where all of the different student clubs run, but each Tea Time was intended to be a community that is a self-sufficient community run by students for the students who know the needs of their particular community. So I basically wrote, I don't want to call it a curriculum because it's not like they're teaching mandatory lessons. Like every club is doing things different. There's a general format that each tea time club uses. But it's all run by the student staff at the schools. And twice a year I'll pop in for like my hello, welcome to tea time if you're new here, and I'll do like AMAs with the clubs. Every once in a while they'll ask me to do a bigger talk, and I've only done a couple of bigger talks. But the tea time clubs themselves, what they do are formatted by and a time for an announcements, anything that's relevant to the school. Somebody, not always leadership, but often leadership will host like the discussion for that day. So sometimes the discussion is an activity that they're all doing together, like figure drawing, but the sort of starter kit is written around the 12 principles, discussing them, what they look like in 2D, what they look like in 3D, how they're applied to life, like why they exist, what does it look like in the graph editor, and like sort of looking at animation from all facets to help everybody learn together. And then third portion of club is always critique. That's the tea time format, and that's what these clubs are doing across the states and beyond.
You pointed out what you were doing there, and this was one of my questions, is that what are the main difficulties for wannabe animators or students regarding animation, not regarding social life, but maybe the access to educational content, or maybe the method, or what you have to learn, how do you have to learn animation in a way?
I feel like the thing that is most difficult for students is the way that animation is taught a lot of places, and the desire, at least that I saw in myself and I saw it in my peers, to like rush through. And so I feel like the people who are most successful with their animations take the time to approach each exercise as an exercise and not as a masterpiece for their reel, and to really take the time to understand what each assignment is teaching you. So there's like the classic assignments. There's the ball with legs. There's a bouncing ball. There's the pillow sack, the flour sack animation. Like there's like some classic animation exercises. At least when I was in school, they were like, this is what the exercise is. But they didn't teach us why that was important and didn't explain the fundamentals of what it was teaching us. And so I think the struggle most students are facing is their own desire to rush through things, to show off their fight scene with 50 ninjas that they created. Like, I get it. The desire to just make things beat each other up is like so strong, but like a really excellently executed bouncing ball is like you're getting more from that. And if you don't do it right the first time, doing it again. In figure drawing, we don't do one drawing and then move on to the next level. Sit in a class and then you draw a gesture, you draw a circle 100 million times. Like you do the same thing over and over and over again, and then analyze your drawings. Where did you go wrong? Where's your perspective off? Where are your proportions incorrect? And the same things, the same attitude, I feel like, needs to be applied to animation, rather than like, oh, well, you didn't do great on your bouncing ball. Here's a ball with legs. It's like, no, let's go back. Let's try it again. And most education doesn't allow for that. And so the time to at least discuss and analyze in something supplemental like tea time, or any animation community that's willing to talk and give feedback, I think is unbelievably helpful for that digestion that you were talking about.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I've never asked myself this, and this is very true for drawing, that you can sketch for 1 hour to warm up. I mean, this is the first time I heard somebody say that you can sketch also for animation. I mean, I do feel like I animate better like after 2 hours of animation, where when you get warmed up. But you do teach this, and you do think about it as just an exercise, but not like an everyday training maybe, or students should do, or even more seasoned people like spend maybe 30 minutes to warm up on such an exercise. So that's very, very interesting. Very interesting. What will you do to improve the access to animation educational content? Because I feel like it's very hard to learn animation on your own, and it can be very expensive to go to an animation school
I think what I would do to improve access to educational content, I would like to see the continued. I think it's difficult because people who put a lot of time into creating courses and such they spent time doing that. People should get paid to do that for sure. And so it's difficult to be like, be great if people put up more free videos. But there are like tons of, I'm sure, I actually haven't looked much at it. There's probably tons of people teaching animation like on YouTube to varying degrees of correct or like skill, but I'm sure that it's there. So I think what I would do to help people improve is I would probably like to see the creation of an online community that was broken up into different sort of skill levels so that people could sort of graduate through like as the community, like maybe get some mods. So like as somebody's like doing just their own personal assignments, it would all be self-driven, of course, could post on the forum and people would help each other get better. And then if you have like a couple mods who are very talented animators who can see when somebody sort of graduated to the next level, they could like give them the graduation badge, and then they can have access to like a new section of the forum that somebody around their same skill level can be helping each other and people more advanced. So then they can go back and help people with their earlier assignments. And then you have this community helping and informing each other and helping each other get through the tough act of learning this skill in a way where you don't get quite seasoned animators who are still learning, having people who are of like a much earlier skill level posting around them or like having challenging conversations and like sort of muddying the waters. I think inviting people of a more advanced skill level to help people of a lower skill level and having like other like general areas of a forum or something like that would be good for everybody to talk together. Getting somebody else's eyes on your animation work is like the best and easiest way to learn. And just sitting in a bubble trying to animate your best, like it's too challenging. And so to improve that, I would encourage people to talk to each other more.
Have you ever got in touch with the Agora community?
They got in touch with me recently. I believe I'll be chatting with them sometime in August.
Okay, cool.
Like a conversation like this. No further conversations about content creation, but I can give them my thoughts on how they should make their community better.
Yeah, because I think this is what they are trying to do. And I mean, that's crazy, the amount of energy they are putting into this. Because when you were talking about getting paid to give feedback or to create animation educational content, I feel like most animators knows how long it takes to make a 5-second good animation. So yeah, that's always complicated to put energy and time into something and don't get any financial reward in a way, because you can't pay your bills by just being gentle.
Yes.
But the thing you've pointed out also that is very interesting is that getting feedback in animation is not that hard, but getting quality feedback is way harder, and evaluating whether you're getting quality feedback or not for a beginner, it's very complicated, I guess, or almost impossible. So yeah, that would be a very interesting thing to kind of have a label or a badge of, a degree or level of skills, and somehow I won't find the word, but to be legit. To judge somebody's work. So yeah, that's what are the main difficulties or struggles for an animator in the game industry?
Two things. One, the desire to create something that is the most beautiful versus the most functional. And then the annoyance felt when being asked to like cut things up or take less time off. I think being really married to your work can be like emotionally challenging for an animator in the game industry. So leaning into the function over the beauty is, I think, very important and something people struggle with. And then just getting like really in the weeds on little details. So being really considerate of what the camera angle is. Like for Heroes, at first I remember like trying to get all these beautiful, most perfect like finger arcs, and it was like the fingers are like 3 pixels on the screen. It is not that important. And so finding those places to save time and get bigger shapes that matter for the camera that you're working with, I think is the other really important thing about games.
More personal stuff maybe, but how do you find balance with all the things you're doing? You don't.
I know.
I burn
don't.
out every weekend.
Yeah. Yes. No, you're not wrong. No, I do okay. I have what I've thought of for several years now, what I call my busy season, where it's been a little bit weird because of the COVID and everything. But basically from late summer, like August is usually when GDC stuff starts spinning up. And then that usually means up until March, I'm going to be very busy with wrangling other people for GDC, writing my own microtalk, designing the slides, and then everything with the animation exchange, which I do all of the visual design for, and all the coordination and art that goes along with planning 2 conferences in tandem is a lot. And then usually we also have like the 48-hour animation jam. I usually just think that August through March I am busy, and then I have like a summer break kind of. But now the schedule's changed because GDC's in the summer now, but Animation Exchange is still in March. So, the answer is I need to reevaluate. But I try and like get it all done in like a couple like evenings, and so I still have, or like I'll take like all day Saturday, and then I'll have some time on Sunday to like play board games with a friend or something like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, not a lot of balance. I should balance more. I have a problem.
Okay, do you find any time to grow your skill outside of your daily work? Or do you think you grow your skill mainly at work now?
I occasionally do animation stuff outside of work, very, very rarely. But I also feel like there is like a general idea that if you're not like animating outside of work, then you're not a real animator, or like you'll never be the greatest animator. And I think I've decided that I don't need to be the greatest animator. I animate for 8 to 10 hours a day at work. And so I am working on my skill actively all the time. And I'm working on my skill in a way that is most relevant to the needs of what I'm doing. And short answer, no, I don't work on animation a lot outside of work, but I definitely still feel like I'm growing my skill.
I wish we had more time, because it's a way to point out soft skills, and I think people doesn't talk about soft skill that much. When you were talking about being the best animator in the world, but if you don't have any soft skill, or if you're a dick, you won't find any job, because people will talk, and all the things you do around you are. I think you've kind of grown other skills, that being able to gather people to lead a talk, which is not something that easy, to be entertaining while communicating some educational content. That's very complicated too. So yeah, I mean, whatever you're doing outside, I mean, you don't need to animate all the time to be remarkable in the industry, let's say. So yeah, that's
it also depends on what your career goals are. Like if your goal is like you want to animate until the day you retire, that's great. I would like to lead a team. I'd like to direct a game. And getting into leading teams and doing direction, the chances of me sitting at my computer and animating all day are pretty slim at that point. And so just there's like nothing wrong with wanting to animate all day and then wanting to animate all night. But if that's your goal, like, hell yeah, go for it. But that's not what my personal goals are. And so I'm happy with my choices.
Okay, cool. That's a cool conclusion. So do you have any final words to wrap things up?
My final words, This is awesome. I think what you're doing is
Thank you.
fantastic. I think you're a great interviewer. Great questions. My final words are I hope everybody works hard to not just wonder what is in it for them at any point in time. You are giving back by having these conversations. And if you're listening to our conversation today, who can you give back to? Where else can you help infuse this industry with your energy and enrich the community of everyone working towards the same thing, which is making dope animation?
Yeah, that's fantastic. So yeah, it's super cool to bring good vibes and energy and talk, because it really fuel the will to animate, and that's super cool. So I'm super happy I had you for this talk, and it was awesome.
Yeah,
And
thank you so much.
I wish you the best for the all the talks you're working on, and and the R&D. Hope you will output a super nice gameplay design with Riot ASAP.
Yeah, sometime down the line we can talk about animation work.
Okay, cool. So have a
Well,
wonderful day or wonderful night, I guess, now. And